Hey, we're the huge movie fanatics, and we are going to be reviewing Captain America: The First Avenger. Um, do you want to start, or should I? I will start with Captain America: The First Avenger. I saw this movie. Yeah, let's throw our disc shield. I saw this movie a while back now.
Unfortunately, our way of doing reviews is like 4 months after we see it, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah, so my memory isn't as strong as it used to be. But the movie I thought was really, really quite good. It had a few problems that I will address, but let's talk about what works, because quite a bit of it works and works insanely well, and I think one of the best things that works is Chris Evans. The casting of Chris Evans as Steve Rogers in that movie was just pitch perfect. I wasn't necessarily sure about his casting at first, because I always think of him as sort of like a cocky, streetwise kind of like
flame torch.
Flame on. He was so perfect at being boyish 40s guy, and being such a
from the 40s.
Such a hero in his own right when he was so small and so pathetic. And I think that was where Captain America worked the best, when it was focused on Steve Rogers as a character, not out of costume. That was pitch perfect. It was so good, and it feels like the 40s. The look of the film is extraordinary. It's by I'm gonna forget his name.
Joe Johnson.
Oh, made
Rocketeer's coming out on Blu-ray in
I
December.
Saw that. Rocketeer he made, which is a pretty terrific movie. If you haven't seen
20 years after Rocketeer, he comes back with this phenomenal, again, period. World War II.
It's a nice compliment to that movie. As I say, so the character of Steve Rogers is just so grand, so epic. The leading lady in it is just gorgeous, and she is fantastic, and she is so strong and powerful, and one of the best leading ladies Marvel's ever put out. I love Tommy Lee Jones and Stanley Tucci. Their roles of in the movie really helped everything in it. I liked Bucky, the sidekick guy, who was quite great. I liked Howard Stark. We tie it into the other Marvel movies. There's quite a few references to Thor and Odin within Captain America if you're looking for them. The entire opening scene of the movie takes place where Iron Man 2 ends, about 50 years later. So like the big climactic battle at the end of Iron Man 2 happens at like that Stark Expo, yeah. And so you see that get destroyed, then like a year later, Captain America comes out and you see it, well, it's thriving and new. And I thought that was just excellent. And the fact that they tied everything into Howard Stark and eventually Tony Stark was just really quite brilliant. As for the movie's faults, it kind of fell flat for me with Captain America. When he's in costume, I think the costume was fine and everything. It was just, I didn't care so much about the action because I cared so much about Steve Rogers, and I felt he was so much more heroic when he didn't have to be...
It's almost like Super 8, the movie.
Yeah, he didn't have to be fighting crime for him to be as heroic as he was. And I think that was where it kind of fell. And also Red Skull, great actor, Hugo Weaving, love him. Wasn't my favorite villain. I thought earlier this year Loki was quite better villain in Thor, and I thought that the villains in both of the Iron Man movies were quite a bit stronger than Red Skull. But I did like how they tied it into Thor with the cosmic cube and everything.
I don't remember any of it.
So there you have it. And there was quite an emotional impact at the end of Captain America when he's in the ship going down. Like the ship is going down.
I remember that because they never freaking had a date yet.
Yeah.
That was. I remember that right now.
Yeah.
They were gonna, and I can tell you, oh my God, especially for this, he's a virgin, apparently, probably, and for this peon who's probably never been on a real date.
Yeah.
And like you said about the hero stuff being, it was like he was called Captain America there, but for you and for me, what was strong about that is it was not Captain America going down, it was like Steve Rogers. And it was so tragic that this amazing guy was going to be denied this hell of a situation,
like,
you know.
It was just really an emotional climax to that movie, more so than I even expected it to be.
Yeah, you normally don't go into a Marvel movie thinking I'm gonna cry.
Yeah,
I didn't
exactly.
cry, but I mean,
I got
did
a
you
bit
get
teary-eyed. I definitely got teary-eyed.
I can't remember. I may have.
And
Can't
I
remember.
was quite shocked at how great that was.
I thought it was also really tragic when he woke up, you know,
Yeah.
and he was in the current
Yeah.
times. And it's like, if she's, I don't know if she's dead. Do we not know if she's dead?
She's
older.
older.
She's not going to be as good in bed.
Yeah, we're unclear as to what.
But I thought that was
his
like when he
name is.
woke up. I mean, that's just terribly tragic for me, and I
Yeah.
thought it was very satisfying because I'm not really a fan of endings that are like all happy and everything. I thought it was very satisfying because it was like when he was going down, even when he's going down, you think, well, maybe there's still a chance. But I mean, when you wake up, how many years later?
Yeah,
60 years later?
Yeah.
70? Your chance is gone.
Yeah, well, that's just it. Like, the one thing Captain America didn't have that all the other Marvel heroes kind of have is a darkness that fuels them. The darkness that fuels Iron Man is all the tragedy that he caused with his weapons. So he uses his weapon to fight back against people who are willing to do what he did. And that's where Iron Man works. Thor has a less dark past, but he's made to be so much that he can't live it into because of his father. Like, there's that darkness there. Captain America didn't really have that, and now he does. He has that darkness, the one that which is the one that got
the
away.
romance
Yeah.
that never, and not only that, but the first one that was going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
how
And I think
horrible.
that was quite well accomplished at making you feel for that
And
character.
it came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
didn't
and it came out of nowhere, and I want to see where it goes. Like, I'm all in for the next time we see Captain America.
Well,
So I'd give it 3.5.
yeah, see, ever since I saw it, I knew we were going to review it, and I teeter-tottered. I'm just going to go 4. I'm not so sure it deserves 4, but it affected. I was so pleased when I walked out of the theater with the overall experience, and I'm just going to go 4 because I'm a huge fan of that era. I love the 30s, the 40s, and World War II. I don't like World War II, but I like that era.
Yeah.
I love cliffhanger serials, Captain Midnight, old time radio shows, all this stuff. I'm a huge nut when it comes to that era, and I thought that the movie. I got to tell you, when the movie started, and it started in the 40s stuff, I was kind of nervous because it seemed to me like, oh no, like to be going through the paces, the necessary, like the beginning of the Steve Rogers stuff,
Yeah.
it seemed like it was going through the paces. And I was worried that this whole movie was just going to go through the paces and you're never going to really feel anything. And then it wasn't until I don't know, Steve, when he was still skinny, he had that conversation with Dr. Erskine before the operation.
Yeah.
I think that scene, for me, was the first time I went, okay, this is not the paces. This is something that is actually a little more, and it's got some feeling to it.
That was my favorite scene in the movie, actually.
Really, that's very cool. I don't remember it, but I remember feeling that, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is about the character, and I think you're 100% right. The Chris Evans and the Steve Rogers. The thing I don't like about a lot of superhero movies and a lot of action movies now is that the tough guy is just so full of himself.
Yeah.
He's just like the Rock or whatever, or
Yeah.
they're badass and they know it. It's just bullshit. The thing I love about Steve Rogers is that he's a guy. He's just a decent guy. And
Yeah.
even after he gets blown up into this
Yeah.
huge hulking guy, what's so cool is it's a complete contrast because you think a guy that looks like that should be talking differently, and he's still like, oh, he's still got the same
He's still
amazing.
a little nerdy guy.
He's
yeah.
still got the great, and it's like even when he's in the outfit.
Yeah.
And I thought that generally when people turn into suit like Tony Stark, I mean, come on, he's just so full of himself.
Yeah,
it's cool, but
it
he's
works
still
for
full.
him.
Yeah, it works, but he's full of himself.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool to see, and it's like rarely ever seen, to see a character like that who's huge and he's all superhero and he's like the nicest guy.
It's
in
going
the
to be
frickin'
kind of
world.
interesting to see how those two characters interact
in
because
Avengers.
he is so gentlemanly and such a kind, gentle soul, and Tony Stark is such a prick. He is he's just a full of himself prick.
They'd
And
be like,
it's-
talk to the Shield.
Yeah, like he's really he's cool and he's very heroic, but he's a prick. So I want to see how those two characters try to get along.
And the scene also, I can't remember what time when this took place, but the scene also where the guy's like Tommy Lee Jones was like, yeah, he's a shrimp or whatever, and that guy over there, he's the shit or whatever, and then he threw the grenade,
Yeah.
and the guy who's all muscular and stuff is like, ah, and then
Yeah.
and he's like, oh, it's a test, and that was another one of them scenes
Yeah.
that kind of
Oh, that
got
was a
the
great
hairs on the
scene.
back
Yeah.
of your goosebumps. Well, it's freezing out, that's why I got goosebumps now, but I just thought I was so happy that with so many movies that have the macho, full of himself, tough guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not really necessarily a comic book person. I've always been a fan of Captain America. I got some of I know the character a little through all kinds of stuff over the years, like cartoons. Republic Serial isn't really about the character, it's just the guy dressed up as
Yeah.
him, and it's a kind of a traditional Republic, Black Scarab, I think, is the bad guy. It's just the name and the look, but I got the character through some of the cartoons and stuff like that, so I know the character, and it was very, I always liked the character because it was that golden age of, like I say, the World War II. Now, the World War II was just a pain in the ass, but I think the thing that was great is all of the competence in America and the patriotism. I'm not necessarily saying whatever about
Yeah.
patriotism in general, but that it was such a magical time because
It
of
was necessary at the time.
yeah. I just thought that I don't know how to say it in the words, but the time was, in a way, it was kind of magical.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say, I don't know why. During World War II, and all the Americans and all that were all. It was nothing like now where everyone's like all divided up. It was like everyone, well, maybe they were, but there just weren't blogs where people expressed it. But I mean, it was like you seemed to just think that everyone just came together and worked towards this goal. I mean, I'm not saying that war is a good goal, but
No.
for whatever reason they came together. They all, America kind of came
Yeah.
together in a way where the women were going and being nurses. The women
Yeah.
were actually going and doing things,
Yeah.
and they weren't just being homebodies. So I think it was the most horrible excuse for all this to be happening, but something good, a lot of good came out of it,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
a lot of stuff like Jeeps. I'm
Yeah.
kind of a Jeep fan. I think that World War II kind of, if I wouldn't be driving a Jeep Wrangler right now if it wasn't for World War II also. So a lot of good things came from it, and I think that and another thing I have to comment on before I forget about it, the tremendous, amazing musical number. Do you remember
that? Was
that?
so good.
That might have been
That
like
was
one
so
of the
fun.
best parts of the movie. And the cool thing about it, like they do so much in superhero movies now, where they change the costume a little bit if it's too faggy as it originally was. Well, they put a cool spin on that, where they actually had him wearing the faggy
Yeah.
costume, which I actually thought looked pretty cool originally when he's
Yeah.
And that musical number, I can't wait until the Blu-ray comes out in October. It's
Yeah.
like, I only saw this movie once, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah,
How many
me
times did you see it?
I just saw it the one time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
I love the music.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, we're on the subject. The music itself by Alan Silvestri, who Back to the Future, like one of my favorite
gosh,
scores.
he
brought
Predator.
it.
What he
Oh,
did with
Predator,
Predator
yeah.
was just.
He
oh.
came in and he brought it for this movie.
I can't.
It's
Unfortunately, I
such a
can't
great-
remember, but
Oh,
I think you're right.
It was such a heroic American theme, and it was just such a It totally felt 40s, but it totally felt now at the same time. It balanced, and it was driving the whole movie, and you just felt the heroism of this character by listening to that music,
Yeah.
and it was just great, just great.